Yeah, let's actually talk about that though, because I think that's a good topic to kind of wrap up on for the mini ep today.
Did you just call this a mini ep?
Mini ep, it's the terms, man.
What is
mini ep?
I don't even know what that is. Is that a thing?
Well, let me simplify it a little bit more for you. This miniature episode, if that helps,
I know,
where we don't go off on the 40-minute where Rich just says, "Let me show you how much I know."
Welcome to the show, where AI takes the floor. Lee and Rich on the mic.
Welcome to the AI Guys podcast, where we make artificial intelligence easy to understand for everyone. I'm your host, Lee Dixon, and as always, I'm joined by the man with a plan to travel Japan, Rich Swire.
Oh, wow, now you're rhyming now?
Yeah, it's my Seussical moment. Let me have it, Rich. You're a very tightly closed book. Sometimes I have to, pull information out from somewhere else.
At least I wasn't going to Nantucket. That would have been easier.
Nope, didn't hit. See, it's hard doing this shit, isn't it? Yeah, it's really hard.
No, I think I heard our producer laughing in the background.
That was him knocking his mic off, being like, "I'm over this."
He appreciates
a year
it.
in.
He's a professional
I'm
comedian, not a poser.
Yeah, that's a joke. He's like feverishly jotting down. Like, I'm going to keep that one. Well, we're not talking about jokes today, Rich. We're talking about some serious topics. Really focused around AI voice. Is it still something that people should be hyping up, or is it something that they should be holding off on when looking at use cases inside of the business? So let's dive right into it. I think the current landscape of AI voice has changed, significantly since the last time we brought it up earlier on the podcast. And based on some customers that we have that we're developing some use cases for in the voice side, and where we've, as consumers, I think been exposed to more voice interactions, would just kind of like to get some takes on that, and maybe talking about where people should be avoiding or maybe focusing on depending on their use case.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the challenge with voice is that it requires, in order for it to feel natural, not only does the actual voice itself, the models that are creating these voices need to be, generating, high fidelity and something that would feel human, which is sometimes more imperfect and perfect, right? So it doesn't feel robotic. But the biggest hurdle that I think that they had to overcome was the latency, right? Because it does take more than a few seconds sometimes to generate a response from a model. So what you start seeing is there's a lot of services out there that are attacking the voice challenge by either building out much smaller models or faster models for that purpose, and then also, more importantly, also building out this kind of new cadence where it's not just delivering and reading, speech to text and text to speech as kind of like the common way of generating voice, that it's actually creating another layer that makes it sound more human, right? And I think one of the first times that we saw this happening, less in a real-time environment, more of in a rendered environment, was with Google's notebook, LLM, which was this idea of you could generate a podcast, right? And so it had these two people talking very, very human-like, right, using ohs and ums and pauses and inflections at the right time. Like, that part is actually extraordinarily complicated, because what you're essentially doing is you're not only understanding what you have to read, right, doing the text-to-speech component, and that engine has to exist, but you also have to look at the contextual way that they're saying it and whether their inflection should be positive, negative, sad, mad, whatever it might be. And they've come a long way, I think, in the last 6 months. I think the last time we even talked about voice was probably about 6 months ago, where we kind of said it's probably going to be another 6 to 12 months before it gets to where there's use cases will unlock where you could use it, right? So I think today it's probably at 80% of what it needs to be in order to satisfy what I would consider a human replacement or use cases that might require that emotional inflection and that much more human reality. But there are probably a handful of use cases where it can be used pretty readily,
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the podcasting piece, right? And how you can actually utilize taking data and just making it like digestible by putting it into a voice option. I mean, we've used it here for proposal reviews internally, taking, I think, even one of the recent white papers that you wrote, Rich, and putting like that fully into it. It was great to hear it, from somebody that, with having these voices drive that knowledge made it so much easier for, I think, team members of ours to understand, because it's a pretty robust document. But to your point, it depends on how someone wants to engage, I think, with AI or knowledge in a way. Whereas a lot of use cases I think businesses are kind of approaching it from is, how do I make this do my support or my sales? And I did read kind of an interesting piece a few weeks back that, because we are all relatively defensive against bot conversations or, getting spammed all day with text and different things like that, having a voice tree that kind of triggers immediately puts people on the defensive and saying, I don't want to have this conversation right now. But some businesses started throwing an accent on those AI agents, and immediately the disconnect time went down significantly, meaning people were at least willing to sit there and wait because they weren't picking up on that it was a agent that they were talking to. But I still feel, based on cadence, based on some of the delays that we've seen, it's just not necessarily a viable solution, at least for outbound conversation at all. Inbound, I think there is a little bit more legs to those types of projects.
I guess you could argue that, there's many, many use cases for outbound, right? Not just like if you're doing outbound sales and you're trying to really come in and, drive and close an appointment or understand or qualify a lead. Certainly that's going to have its challenges depending on what you're selling and what your questions you're asking. And that could be interpreted in a different light because it's a different context. But if it's like, for example, let's say you're calling out for a survey, right? Yeah. Or maybe it's something to do with politics, or maybe it's just something to do with like local surveys that a city wants to do. Yeah. And it just literally comes out and says like, hey, I'm with the city of XYZ and we're doing a quick survey about the project X on 5th Street. We'd love to get your feedback. That's probably totally okay with AI, because people are just like, I'm not as defensive about it. And in some weird way, I'm like, well, they're going to have to call 10,000 people. So of course they have to use something that's better than a human.
Yeah. It's rather like static data collection that isn't going to vary or have, much of a shift in what that conversation needs to be. Now you might get somebody that's,
they could ask anything. It's still an AI model, but it's really more about the patience of the it's really the cadence of the conversation and the potential delays that might occur, and where the human is going to take that conversation left or right, and how the AI would respond. But yeah, if it's within it's a specific goal and task, and there's questions are being primarily answered and asked by the AI, like I said, I think it's like 80% there. I think it works really well. Yeah, for a
little more scripted versus like free form, give me what you got kind of stuff.
I think so. Yep. I think if you can continue to have it more directive, you're gonna not fall. It's not gonna fall into that trap where you have these massive delays where it has to go in. Like if I'm gonna have a voice application where I'm gonna ask it very long form questions and I'm expecting a long form answer, it's probably not a great use of voice, right? That's better to do on like a different UI. But if it's quick and back and forth and your delays are small and you're using smaller models, so by default you're kind of restricting its capabilities, I think it works really well. And I could think of a lot of different use cases where that I think it would add a tremendous amount of value. Especially when there's always like those any type of use case where there's that kind of informational intro, like maybe it's a mass phone call to like all the students at your school about a snow day or something, or an upcoming event. Yeah, where there is a natural question back, like maybe it's like, hey, just so you know, this week, whatever, homecoming is on, we'd love to see you there. And then somebody might have a question like, oh, where do I park? And then you could park here. So instead of it just being like this one-way blast where you just hang up the phone at the end, so there's so many use cases, I think, that it'll find its way to percolate into. But here's kind of the bigger unlock that I think in general AI is waiting on, but voice is probably certainly waiting on, is we've got to get to the point where all these different low-hanging use cases are actually happening, and we are talking to AI on a regular basis through these different use cases that might come into our lives, and we become okay with it. And then once we become okay,
we're not there yet, but
but once we become okay with it, like we understand how to talk to UI, it's no different than like learning how to use ChatGPT or learning how to use any new tool. it's awkward at first, but then when you start to understand how it works and you see the value of it, then you can work it within your in your benefit. And I think fast forward 6 to 12 months from now, I'm going to guess that almost every person, that has a phone will probably have at least gotten 2 or 3 AI calls about us. Could be about their credit card, it could be about their school, it could be about their work, but they will have AI calls happening on a monthly basis for sure, multiple per month, and that will get us used to understanding how those systems work. And by that time, also, I think we're probably 12 to 18 months from it being indistinguishable from a human. And also there's going to meet in the middle where humans will become more and more okay with it. And the thing that I think people are okay with, and I've heard stories where there's been companies that say right off the bat, hey, I'm AI, just so you know. And it actually sparks curiosity and actually invokes more conversations to happen versus some random person, because it's kind of I think a lot of people go into when another human calls them, especially if it's a cold call or something like that they're not expecting, there's this automatic defensive layer.
Exactly.
But if there is actual value in information being transmitted, and then they feel like they're talking now to an AI, it sounds weird, but it takes out that emotional charge, because what am I going to do?
It removes the trigger. If it's
am I going to yell at an AI? That's like just that's like me yelling at a wall, right? Like, and so the minute you take, like, if I'm yelling at a human, there's some kind of weird, demented, sick, I don't know why people do it, but they, people that yell at other humans, they're like,
it's a triggering piece. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just mad for whatever reason.
Welcome to the psychology side of our podcast,
exactly,
where we dive really deep.
But the minute they know that it's a computer, then they're like, okay, well, yeah, maybe they don't want the call, and they say, please don't call me again, whatever, or no, I'm the wrong guy, whatever it might be. But but it also disarms them. I think it's disarming.
Yeah.
And takes that bravado out of that person, which in some cases is probably a good thing, right?
Yeah. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. The biggest piece of human adoption takes place with us just getting more comfortable experiencing AI in different mediums. ChatGPT didn't just start with, hey, chat with this and it's going to unlock all this stuff, and people just dove right in. Like, it was clumsy. We fumbled through a lot of it. We had to get comfortable with what I'm happy to share with what I don't want to share. But as time goes on, everyone gets more comfortable with it being a more valuable tool.
Yeah, and they're going to use it. They're going to use it on their phone, right? Like, people are already talk to ChatGPT. Like, my wife talks to ChatGPT. I talk to ChatGPT. So we're already
same thing with Siri years ago.
Right.
I don't want to talk to my phone and ask it questions. Well, that happened for about a year, and then you were completely comfortable doing that.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, because of that, they're going to start talking to ChatGPT natively on the phone, and that will start to rewire their brain to be like, oh, I know how to talk to an AI.
Sure. And having that voice capability, like, don't think that they didn't release that as a piece where it's like, you could just have ChatGPT speak the result back to you as well, like, versus you just doing talk to text. Like, having that conversational piece there is just one more way of kind of breaking down that barrier.
And like anything else, like I use ChatGPT if I'm doing something like research, or I'm trying to brainstorm, or I'm asking for long form content. I'm not going to use voice, right? Because I don't want it to. Right. It gets like, I'm not going to sit here and let them read 1,000 words. But if I'm just like brainstorming or asking about something specific, or asking a question where I know it's a 5-word answer, like, you could talk to like just like a normal conversation you'd have with somebody else. It's a very unique experience. So, and as that translates into the workplace and into the business, you want to untether it from the ChatGPT and move it into the enterprise world, where you can actually, programmatically provoke thousands of phone calls out to your customers, maybe gain feedback, or maybe provoke hundreds of phone calls to your employees as a way to communicate something. There's a lot of use cases where I think voice will have a tremendous uptick with the AI usage, and the voice models are getting way, way better.
They really are.
Than they were before, and now they offer much more humanistic, at least it feels much more human, in the way that they talk, in the way that they pause, and also they feel more reasoning, like they're actually listening to what you're saying. So like I said, 6 to 18 months, we're going to start to see this adoption get to the point where it's going to be almost indistinguishable. And I think we'll probably be, and I know in my case, I'll probably be talking to AI more than I'm talking to humans.
Yeah, definitely more than you're talking to me.
Yeah.
But let's actually talk about that, though, because I think that's a good topic to kind of wrap up on for the mini ep today. When we're talking about voice versus...
Did you just call this a mini ep?
Mini app. You know, it's the terms, man.
What is
mini app?
What
Mini,
have you become?
sorry,
You've become this like podcast.
I forgot.
I don't even know what that is. Is that a thing?
Well, let me simplify it a little bit more for you. This miniature episode, if that helps.
I know,
where we don't go off on the 40-minute where Rich just says, "Let me show you how much I know." I want this to be a little more digestible.
I want this to be
for people today.
I thought we were doing a Rich app, but now we're doing a mini app today.
I just say an ME. An ME. We're gonna do an ME today.
You're just making up words. I love it.
Yeah, it's gonna be beeps and
all
boops.
Right. I think we should trademark that. Put that in the trademark list.
Mini app. I'm sure someone has said it before me.
Sorry to interrupt. I just made this mini app into a maxi app.
There it is. Bang. Well, what we're talking about, I think you've outlined a couple of good things for businesses to think about, but really voice versus chat versus like a hybrid of both. Businesses should maybe be looking at using a voice solution, especially if they have an internal use case. Like you said, just getting information out there, maybe bringing things full circle. If you can get your employees to kind of adopt and start experiencing AI in more of a one-to-one voice solution, that could also help it permeate and become more acceptable, and just also probably as a business, work out some of those kinks or those, understanding what these cadence problems could be. But I definitely feel like we've seen, clients looking at a solution that can be chat first, but also a voice option that lays in for like after hours calls where, I'm probably not going to get somebody on the phone that works at this company. I'm probably getting someone from overseas anyways. So if AI can help me in a faster way, in a more compliant way, get what I'm looking for, I'm probably as a consumer more okay with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're at a phase where, it does take a little bit of that adoption cycle to catch up and people to get more comfortable with it. But I think we're at the phase where if people are building out AI models and AI agents that they are hyper comfortable with answering those questions, then I certainly think that most people are going to converge onto the thought that even subpar or average AI is better than what they currently have, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's, sorry, nobody's available after 5, call us tomorrow, or whether it's go to live chat and get some sort of really crappy experience with FAQ, like the intercom stuff. I don't know why people use that service. It's such crap. I still don't. That's the most annoying thing is when I go to like an intercom chat and it's like,
I could really use this help.
And it gives like all these prompts and it's like FAQ. Oh, do you need help with this? And I'm like, and I click on that. And then it gives me more prompts, and I'm sitting here going, I type in my answer. It goes, was this article helpful? I'm like, bro, like just give me the answer. Like if I wanted to read War and Peace to figure out how to change my name, all
I want to do is I forgot my password.
I'm going to go on record right now. If you are a company that you're using that service and you think people like that, just you're in denial. Like what we want is I ask a question and I want the answer. That's it. I don't want to be linked to some article or some FAQ or some knowledge base. Nobody wants that. I don't know why people think that they want. I don't know who is up there on the hill going, the best customer support is having them read a 5-page article and watch a 3-minute video. No,
this is corporate gaslighting. Just you guys are doing.
Answer my question. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. But voice or any UI for that matter. Once people get confident in their AI agents are able to answer with a high efficacy, with high fidelity, then I think the unlock is going to be, hey, release it into the wild, because I would say that 95% of the customer support experience today that I experience, this is my own personal opinion, as a consumer, whether it be my bank or from a business perspective, whether it be through a business that we use internally, whether it be me chatting with any one of the vendors that we work with, or even just something that's even, I'm talking to a local restaurant, all suck. Like I don't think and it's almost like they go out of their way to suck. It could be mildly better. So you're either stuck with either getting on a phone call, calling somebody and waiting 30 minutes and then maybe having a good conversation, maybe not, but that's an hour of your day. But I don't see why they can't expose that entire knowledge base easily through voice or through live chat or through whatever. I think hopefully AI will unlock this for a lot of these companies. And I think right now it's just a fear, uncertainty, doubt layer that they have to break through. But, certainly we've done it for our customers and it's a night and day, right? Like
if there's an aspect of your business that currently sucks, AI voice is not going to make it suck more. You know what I mean? Like it's only going to unlock potential more bandwidth that comes from that.
Yeah, just do it right. Like build out your AI agent, and then like use a platform like ours, and then slowly unlock live chat, email, SMS, and then eventually voice. But quite honestly, I think it's probably the coolest thing that you could do as a company. And I think people will overappreciate the fact that you're extending this AI that's been trained on your information in these multimodal formats. And the more people are using OpenAI and ChatGPT and these other voice apps, it's all going to merge. If you're not thinking about doing it right now and trusting that the models will get better, because there's billions of dollars going into this,
yeah,
you're just, I don't know, you're on planet, like, I don't know what you're.
You already broke Rich's brain.
Yeah,
if you're not doing it already, then Rich doesn't. He honestly doesn't have an insult that's ready for you.
I can't steel man, straw man, any other argument to this. Like,
yeah,
I highly encourage anybody and everybody, even if you're a small business, like, have AI answer your phone. Why not? What do you have to lose? You're not going to lose customers. Nobody's going to be like, well, that sucked. They're going to, at minimum, they're going to say like, that was really interesting. That was kind of cool. That's about,
I didn't expect that.
Yeah. I asked you some questions, didn't know the answer. And then you're like, oh, then it gives you, okay, that's good feedback. I'm going to go train it on that. Right.
Yeah.
But eventually
the
AI will get good at what it does because you train it, and then boom, you're living the dream.
Done.
You're going
there we go.
You're going to Japan.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for everyone that's been listening, thanks again for joining us on this episode. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay in touch. Also, check out our Substack for more content, which will be linked to this episode to continue this discussion. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
That was a great mini app.
Welcome to the show, where air takes the floor. Leah Rich on the mic.